Jefferson Barracks. Jefferson Barracks was used for many years as a staging area, post and military hospital from the early days of the frontier until after World War II. The National Cemetery located here was established in 1863 and, like so many of the buildings on the post, has ghost stories of its own. Many of the tales at Jefferson Barracks revolve around the old buildings and former hospitals where so many men died after being wounded on the battlefields. In January 1922, President Warren G. Harding ordered a section of Jefferson Barracks to become the home of a veterans hospital, which opened in March 1923. The physicians here were given the task of caring for wounded and invalid soldiers, and the hospital began providing continuous treatment for veterans until the base closed down. During the years of its operation, the building became known for hosting a ghost. According to a story, there was once a private Halloween party that was held at the hospital. Security officers who worked the gate later commented to one of the party organizers about the excellent Civil War officer's uniform that one of the guests had worn to the party. The official was taken aback and replied that there had been no one wearing such a costume. The security officer was just as surprised because he distinctly remembered a man in a Civil War-era uniform who had entered the hospital grounds, presumably to attend the party that was going on. Another similar version of the story involves the same Halloween party at the hospital. The host of the party, who was one of the officials at the hospital, noticed a man in a Civil War officer's uniform sitting on a stone wall at the edge of the throng of guests. The host walked over to the man and asked him how he liked the party. The soldier whispered a hoarse reply like it good, he said. The host, apparently miffed at the guest's crude reply, turned around and started to walk away. However, he looked back over his shoulder a few moments later and saw that the man in the Civil War costume was gone. He later discovered that no one invited to the party, or in attendance that night, wore such a costume to the event. And the former hospital is far from the only site known for its ghosts. There have been stories told about the post for many decades. During the Civil War, and for years after, soldiers guarded the train depot and the railroad tracks located along the Mississippi River. They also guarded the headquarters building that was located on the bluff above the depot. One night during the Civil War, a sentry was walking his post near the building. As he rounded the corner, he reportedly observed a solitary figure walking up the grassy hill from the train yard. As the soldier stood watching, he realized that the man was not a person at all, but what was described as a blurry spook. Stories about the headquarters building continue to be told, and stories range from encounters with the ghost of the Civil War-era officer to strange sounds that cannot logically be explained. It is not uncommon for security officers to hear footsteps and rustling sounds in the building when no one is there. There is also a long-running legend about a ghost who haunts the post's old powder magazine as well. The massive limestone building was built in 1857 as a secure location to store rifles, cannons and gunpowder for the troops at the post. In 1871, the Federal Arsenal in St. Louis was closed and its contents were also moved to Jefferson Barracks. The powder magazine remained in constant use until the post closed in 1946. In more recent times, it has become a historical museum that is run by the St. Louis County Parks and Recreation Department. The story of the ghost here has its beginnings around the start of World War II. In the dark days at the start of the war, sentries were posted all around the fort to protect it from possible incursion. One of the most important guard positions was the powder magazine. Armed sentries were often seen patrolling around the building or walking across the top of the stone wall that surrounded the magazine. Several of the soldiers who stood guard here reported seeing a ghostly sentry who would occasionally appear and challenge the confused guard who was standing his post. The threatening spirit was said to have a bullet hole in his head, running red with blood, and was said to be so frightening that several guards allegedly threw down their guns and deserted their posts after encountering him. One story had it that a certain soldier was so frightened that he not only left his post one night, but that he also left the army. According to the story, the spectral sentry was a guard who had been killed years before when a raiding party attempted to steal munitions from the powder magazine. He was believed to have confronted his living counterparts because he thought they were trespassers. Even after all of these years, he was still on duty, even in death. Many of the former barracks buildings are said to be haunted as well, including Building 28. This building was constructed back in 1897 as a double barracks with a 3-story tower in the center. It had been designed to hold up to 4 companies of cavalry soldiers and their non-commissioned officers. Today it is the home of the 218th Engineer Squadron. Throughout the 1970s, men working inside of the building reported hearing ghostly footsteps pacing the corridors of the building. One night, a man was working on some training records for an upcoming inspection when he heard someone walking around on the 2nd floor above his office. He didn't think that anyone else was in the building, but as it simply sounded like another soldier working upstairs, he never bothered to check on it. Later though, more footsteps joined the first set and the noise became very distracting as he tried to finish his reports. Finally, he tossed aside his papers and went upstairs, but when he got to the area where he believed the sounds had been coming from, he found nobody there. He looked around for a few moments and then decided to write the whole thing off to his imagination. However, as soon as he got back downstairs to his desk, the footsteps started again. This time, he decided to just wrap up his reports and call it a night. One evening in the fall of 1980, Chief Master Sergeant Eugene Anaker and several other Air National Guard NCOs were working late in the building. When they decided to leave for the night, the group turned out the lights, locked the doors and then walked out into the parking lot in front of the building, where they stood talking for a few minutes. As they started to leave, Anaker happened to look up and noticed that one of the lights on the 3rd floor of the building had been accidentally left on. He dispatched the lowest ranking of the small group to go back into the building and turn it off. The young NCO unlocked the main doors, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and turned the light off. A few moments later, he reappeared downstairs and he locked the door behind him as he left the building again. As the young man walked toward him, Chief Anaker looked up and noticed that the same light was on once again, even though they had just seen the other soldier turn it off. Thinking that the wiring in the old building was going bad, he sent the same NCO back into the building again to turn it off. When the NCO returned to the parking lot once more, Anaker was stunned to see that the same 3rd floor light was once again shining. Again, he sent the same NCO back inside to turn the light off once more. This time when he came out though, none of them looked to see if the light had turned itself back on. This time, they simply got into their cars and went home. I am an F-18 pilot stationed at Naval Air Station Lemoore. I am part of the FA-41, or also known as Black Aces. It's a kick-ass squadron with a lot of history tearing shit up across the whole globe. I was deployed multiple times with carrier strike groups to Middle East. Most of the time I was just flying in support of ground operations, simply dropping some serious ordnance on some insurgents in the cave or something. Occasionally I would fly DCA or defensive counter-air missions at Strait of Hormuz. Usual fun stuff that pilots get to do. I was deploying a lot, and never really got to fly a lot of training missions. In 2019, my wingman and I were training off the coast of San Diego with Marine F-18 squadron called Red Devils. We did that quite a bit. We loved training with Marines practicing defensive counter-air as Marines were practicing their air interdiction and dogfighting. They were some good pilots. We refueled at an aircraft carrier docked in San Diego and we took off for our flight. I checked in with air controllers with our mission number so we could begin our training coordinating with the carrier radar team and E-2 Hawkeye that flew behind us giving us a radar feed for area ahead. I was no Top Gun, but at this point of my career I was a pretty experienced pilot. We were about to run through our defensive drill when I had a call from a radar team informing me and the Marines that there were some strange objects about 50 nautical miles away from us. My weapons officer also mentioned it to me but I brushed it off as a glitch. We were training in the warning area, so there shouldn't have been a lot of air traffic in this area. But then Red Devils got on the exercise channel and confirmed that their onboard radars are getting weird hits about 50 nautical miles away southwest of where we were. The exercise control officer ended the training. Marines started flying back to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar because they didn't have Super Hornets and their fuel yanks were much smaller than ours. We stuck around waiting for further instructions from the carrier. I told my weapons officer, I hope Air National Guard is on top of it today because I sure as shot don't feel like flying over there. Well, let's just say Air Defense Sector Operations Center told the carrier that by the time the F-16s fly out of March Air Reserve Base it will be at least an hour and they might as well send the F-18s. So we were now tasked with a real-world intercept. We were told to land in the carrier and arm before heading back out. We were armed with AIM-120M ROM. This missile is used exclusively for air-to-air battle. This area was known for aerial phenomena, like WAPs and other stuff, like weird streaks in the air. Commander Fravor ended up chasing one tic-tac out back in 2004, so we were all fairly familiar with the WAP activity in the area. Despite the curiosity, I didn't want to accept this change of mission, but the wing commander directly reached out and told us to get over there and check it out. Well, what the hell are you going to do? We took off from the carrier and began to get hits on our radar, but they were very intermittent, like our radar was glitching. The carrier radar operators kept walking us onto the target as it was moving. Eventually we hit what was called a merged plot, meaning now the carrier only sees one radar signature, and he can't distinguish between the US and the target. That usually means we should be able to get a solid radar hit on our aircraft radar. But still nothing. The radar hits kept going in and out. Me and my Weezo started to look for an object visually, but still couldn't see anything. After 10 minutes of circling around the area, we had a visual on it. It looked like a super smooth tic-tac. It was just hanging there, not moving. It was sitting at about 15,000 feet, so we had to climb a little to get to it. As soon as we were within a mile of it, object abruptly moved. It was so fast that we were all shocked by its aerodynamic performance. Holy shit, dude, this thing is fucking fast, my Weezo said. As object moved, it changed shape. It was now a donut-looking object spinning around an invisible axis. We circled around again to get to its new position, which was even higher than previous. When we're close, object jumped again. It was like it was playing with us. All of a sudden I heard a call on our air control net. An unknown voice was talking. Elvis, which was my call sign. I need you to get a lock on that thing. What the fuck, I thought, and who are you? Who is talking? Identify yourself, I said. Unknown voice said. It's classified. In the situation like that, a normal procedure is to ask for initials of a person authorizing the attack. Give me your initials then, whoever you are. FMB, voice on the other end said. I told my Weezo to get ready. He told me we need to get some distance between us and the object so he can weaponeer the shot. Object was not moving. It was still and was changing its shape to a saucer-like this time. We swung around the F-18. I turned off afterburner, trying to stabilize the aircraft, making it easier for Weezo to engage. We were about 1,600 yards from the thing. Our radar started acting out again. It was obvious that whatever that thing was, it was jamming it. That is technically a hostile act. I briefly lost visual, so my Weezo had to slew a targeting pod on it again. He did and was able to lock in. As soon as I locked, I let off a shot and then another. My wingman shot 2 more MROMs at it. We were trying to watch an effect on our targeting pod using FLIR. 2 missiles exploded before even reaching the target, but other too hot. The thing did not explode though, but it did lose whatever propulsion system it had, because it began to fall. No signs of debris coming of it. It was still completely intact. We called the weapons away to the carrier and reported that aircraft was shot down. We heard good job. Go ahead and RTB on the other end. We landed on the carrier. As soon as we got out the F-18, we were escorted down to SIF, or a top-secret facility, that housed all of the super-duper secret information usually used by intel folks. We were told that the craft was experimental and thanked us for participating in its testing. That was extremely difficult to believe, because the picture of how it moved got imprinted in my mind. There is no fucking way we made it. In a state of shock, me and my Weezo walked out of the SIF. But if we were told that, then it is probably true, we both thought. I returned home that day and collapsed from exhaustion. I went well over my flight hours for this week, and I couldn't help passing out for about 12 hours. I woke up to some serious headache, accompanied by ringing in my ears. I never had that before, even when I flew missions overseas for a lot longer than that. The headache would not go away. I went to emergency room, and I was told that I was just exhausted, and there is nothing to worry about. The headache persisted, and was just getting worse and worse. I ended up being hospitalized. The CAT scan came back with some anomaly in brain activity, like the chemical reactions were changing in my brain. I began to see things. It was terrifying. I would see people walk and disappear into thin air. I was walking into a diner I go to all the time in Fresno, just to find that it has completely changed inside, but it would look normal when I would walk out. I was calling friends that said they never knew who I was, and to stop calling them. It was like I kept walking in and out of different dimensions. Finally, the headache has gone away and all of the visions had stopped. But I am convinced that this was not a man-made aircraft that we had shot down off the coast of California.